Does California have volcanoes? How about active volcanoes that could erupt in our lifetime? The answer is yes. Many people are aware of the volcanoes in the northern part of California, like Shasta and Lassen. Those volcanoes are part of a volcanic chain called the Cascade Range, and those volcanoes are associated with a subduction zone. The chain of volcanoes stretches from Canada all the way down to California, and that line of volcanoes are caused by the subduction of two plates meeting each other and one subducting or sinking below the other. But did you know that there are also volcanoes further south in California? Active volcanoes that seem to sit quietly today, but have left evidence of their past activity and recent geologic activity spewed all across the eastern California landscape.
Topographic guys. So now we have a run. Right behind us, classic red bed.
Welcome back to Let's Go Geo, everyone. As usual, I'm your field guide, Heather, and today I'm taking you on a tour of the volcanoes of eastern California. It may seem relatively quiet around me right now, but believe it or not, large earthquake-producing faults and magma-rumbling volcanoes are actually all around me. In the late 1800s, an earthquake of a magnitude about 7.6 struck the Owens Valley, the valley you see behind me right now, and it was felt for hundreds of miles. And about a century later, in the 1990s, some mysterious deaths of plants and people prompted officials to investigate what was going on. And what they found served as yet another grim reminder of just how active and potentially dangerous this volcanic landscape can be. And if you'd like to learn more about what was going on in the northern part of the valley, check out my video on the Mammoth Mountain Mysteries. It turns out the earthquakes and volcanoes of the Owens Valley region are actually young, geologically speaking, and quite capable of rumbling again, even in our lifetime. So what could be the cause of all this activity? Well, in order to answer this question, we need to take a broader view of the American West. Take a look at Nevada, for instance. If you look at an aerial view or a topographic view, you see this kind of bumpy landscape. What you see is mountain and valley, and mountain and valley, and repeat. Now, what you're actually seeing there are lifted blocks, the mountains, also called horsts, and downdropped blocks in between, the valleys, also called grabens. This topography, this landscape, is created by rifting. The American West is actually rifting, pooling apart. And that causes our basin and range topography. Now you might be wondering what causes these blocks, these horsts and grabens, to move relative to one another. Well, they're actually moving along faults. And that's what we have going on here in the Owens Valley. The Owens Valley, the graben, is downdropped between these mountain ranges and moving along faults. The valley is essentially bounded by faults. There are faults on the Sierra Nevada side, and there are faults on the White Inyo side, and there's even a fault that dissects the Owens Valley itself. In fact, that's related to that big earthquake we talked about earlier. But there are even more than that. Tons of faults dissect this landscape, and magma can move into vents along those faults. There's three major volcanic features here in eastern California. There's the Long Valley Caldera, which I talk extensively about in another video. Check that out if you want to learn about huge eruption hundreds of thousands of years ago. There's the Coso volcanic field to the south of me. And there's the Big Pine volcanic field, which is actually, well, if you think you see a volcano behind me, perhaps you've been eyeballing that, you're right. That is actually an old volcano. And there's several of them back there in what is the Big Pine volcanic field. A series of many volcanoes, dozens of volcanoes and vents that are associated with the movement of basaltic magma. Cinder cones are basically piles of vesicular volcanic rock fragments that pile up around a central vent. Seismic imaging has actually detected thinning below this volcanic field evidence that supports a connection to that basin and range rifting. The Big Pine volcanic field is considered a monogenetic volcanic field, and that means that each of the volcanoes, the cinder cones, and fissures actually only experience one episode of eruptive activity. This is common in areas with low magma supply. Basically, each of them do not source from the same volcanic plumbing system. Instead, the magma actually moves through and finds a new conduit to the surface each time. The material that comes out of these volcanoes is primarily basaltic, sometimes also referred to as mafic. You can basically think more iron-rich or silica-poor chemistries. Eruptions seem to have begun here around 1.2 million years ago. What's left of that are mostly erosional remnants now. There's also one eruption around 1 million years ago that has a slightly different chemistry. We consider that felsic or more silica-rich chemistry. Everything else is, like I mentioned, more basaltic. But most of the activity has actually occurred more recently, within the past hundreds of thousands of years. I know, but geologically speaking, that is considered young. Volcanoes like Crater Mountain, the one you see behind me, and its nearby sibling Red Hill, have erupted around 300,000 years ago. Mineralogical characteristics can be used to distinguish specific flow units from one another. Particularly abundant in the older flow units are phenocrests, or large crystals of minerals like olivine, pyroxene, and plagioclase. We can also find some other interesting volcanic features here, particularly associated with basaltic lavas. That is, Aa and Pahoehoe lava flows, and pelagonite, which forms when basaltic lavas flow into water. There used to be more water in this valley associated with Owens Lake. If you want to learn more about that, check out my recent video on why Owens Lake is now dry. Now, glaciers and these associated waters have also carved up and eroded away at this existing volcanic material, causing ravines, canyons, and even leaving behind bathtub rings from old shorelines. And earthquakes, like that big 1872 Lone Pine quake, have caused visible fault displacement, also called fault scarps, into the existing volcanic landscape. It's a pretty spectacular view and pretty obvious volcanic landscape. It leaves us with a question. When really was the last time this erupted, and will it erupt again? In 2015, researchers Vasquez and Wolford did some updated research to try to determine when the last time this place erupted, and they used some new techniques for dating the volcanic material. They discovered that the last eruption was around 17,000 years ago, with several others within the 10 and 20,000 year range. That's Pleistocene. That's pretty recent eruptions. Given that and all the other evidence around here of volcanic activity and seismic activity, we can certainly expect that it's possible this place could erupt again. But then again, it is a monogenetic volcanic system, and a lot of time can lapse between eruptions. They can sit pretty quietly for some time. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And in the meantime, enjoy this amazing landscape, courtesy of the Basin and Range and the volcanoes and earthquakes of the Owens Valley. I'll see you guys next time.